Hi everyone and welcome to Curly and Yarny. I'm Lena and for today's video I will be taking you onto the journey of weaving a super easy beginner friendly scarf that will impress all your friends and family. So let's get started. So for today's video, I'm really trying to offer you a beginner-friendly project. So a project that could be easily the first project that you could do on your rigid Heddle Loom. And if you like it, it could still be a very cool project to do if you're more advanced. But I remember when I started rigid Heddle Loom weaving, I struggled with a few things while making my first few projects. The first thing was finding the right yarn for the right heddle and finding the right combination of weft and warp yarn. I was trying a lot of different things and most of them didn't work out so well. Sometimes it was mostly a warp face, so we couldn't see the beautiful weft I had picked, and that happened a bit too many often. Second thing that happened, I had a hard time choosing right colors that would match together well when they would intertwine in the warp and the weft. So I'm trying to solve this problem for this project. And another problem that I was having is figuring out how much yarn I would need to make my project. There were so many times when I had to go back to the store to buy one more or two more balls of yarn to be able to finish a project. So I'm trying to offer you today an all-in-one project, so a project with no headache, no puzzle, a very easy solution to start weaving. And also, the best thing of all, it's gonna look super nice without much effort. The secret of my project here is the yarn that I'm going to use. So for the project, I'm using Lion brand yarn. They have their collection Mandala. So if you're a little bit familiar with those yarn, there are usually cakes of yarn that have changing colors in them. But for today's project, I'm using specific ones. I'm using yarn from their ombre collection. So it does not only changes colors, but it's more like it changes tones of the same color. And it also has some little speckle, touches of speckle of lighter color inside of the darker color. It reminds me a lot of kind of a jeans. And without much effort, you can get a super nice looking scarf. So it's going to be very visually interesting and it's going to be very easy to make. So the size of this yarn is 4, or if you prefer medium or worsted. So this is the perfect size, in my opinion, to work in a 7.5 heddle, so it fits just very well in it. This is 100% acrylic yarn. So for me, this is the absolute beginner yarn because first, it is nice, it is soft, it is affordable, and most importantly, it forgives on tension. I'm not gonna promise you're gonna have a perfect tension, no, but it's gonna help a lot. I've already warped the loom, so today this is not a warping video, this is really only a project video. If you want to learn more about how to direct warp the loom or how I direct warp my loom, you can check a video right here. So in this video I try to give you as much hints as I can to help ease the process, because I know it's not always easy to warp your loom when you're starting rigid Heddle loom weaving. And now for the specifics. So I bought 2 balls of this yarn. I used the whole first ball into the warp, and I had to dig a little bit into this one to reach the desired width of my project. So I warped for 18 inches wide, and I warped for 2.5 meters or 100 inch if you prefer. This is a length that I really like to work my scarves. I like my scarves quite long and pretty large. So if you wanted to make them narrower or shorter, it's also possible, but just note that with this size, so 18 inches wide and 2.5 meters long, you would need 1 whole ball, and then this whole second ball can be used for the weft. So without further ado, all I need to do now is put some yarn onto my shuttle and then we'll start weaving. Let's start this. So I always like to start in the up position. And I usually always start from left to right. I think that's because I'm left-handed, but there's really no perfect answer to this. So now that's the first pick, and I'm gonna leave a little bit of yarn hanging here, and I beat. And I want to weave in this bit of yarn too, so that it doesn't just hang there. I've put my heddle back into the upper position, and I will take this little piece of yarn, I will make it go through the last thread of my warp. So here, this is the last thread, it's in the hole. So I make it go around it, and I push it back into the shed, and I let it hang there. So let me just show you from close. So here, this is my last thread. So my yarn will go around this last thread and into the shed. I make it go about a inch and a half in, and then I beat again, and I. So now with the first pick, I have woven in the end. So this is pretty much secured there for now, and I will cut the remaining piece of yarn after it would finish. So for now, I just leave it like that. And now I put it in the down position, and I weave my second pick. I fix the yarn around the edge, and I beat. So now we will bend a few picks in. So I just wanted to do a little side note that later on in the video, when the project will be finished, I will be showing you how I finish the edge here once it's off the loom. So at the moment it is kind of loose, so there's usually in many of my projects I would be doing hem stitching, but for this project, because I want it to be super beginner friendly, I'm not going to hem stitch. I will be showing you the simplest method to finish a scarf. So we will be making knots, so just make sure to watch till the end, because I'll be showing you how I did that at the end. So if you like the yarn that I am using today, please note that it is available through the Lion Brand's website, and they have tons of other colors that you could choose from. So I have provided a link in the description down below. Just note that this is an affiliate link. So if you click on the link and make a purchase, I would receive a small commission from it. So there's really no more cost to you. That's just a way for me to keep making more of those videos. Here's another tip that I want to share with you. So the way that I keep track of the woven length that I have on the project is this here. So this is 1 meter tape made out of like plastic cube paper. Those are given away at IKEA, and I reuse them over and over again. This one is brand new, but might see in other videos that I use the same one over and over again, even though it's cracked and everything. So what I do, I simply use it. I like it because since it is kind of paper, it's very flexible. So even if you do the same mistake as I did and you started rolling your project onto your front apron, I can still go around it and see. So my project starts here, and from here I have 6 inches already woven. So with masking tape, I write on it 6. I take it off, and I tape it here. And as I go, I will keep moving this little piece of masking tape, and I will keep on measuring where I am at and adding numbers there, so at the end I can add them all up and know where I am at. Welcome back. So since the beginning of this video, I've been bragging about this yarn and how I find this yarn amazing and so easy to work with. But to be completely honest, there is a little twist to it when it comes to weaving with it in the weft. This yarn, as I've been saying, is a yarn that changes color on the ball, and we can choose to ignore this transition while we weave the weft, or we can decide to try to keep the integrity of this transition. I've made a whole video about yarn that changes colors, so it is right here. So in this video I explain more the logic behind how to put yarn on the shuttle to make sure to keep the integrity of it. So I don't want to go too much into detail in this video, but I just want to tell you what I did to keep the transition of the colors. But more importantly, I want to tell you that this is not something that has to be done. If it was one of my first projects, even one of my 10 first projects, I would have probably not cared about the transition at all. I would have probably just kept weaving as the yarn comes and I wouldn't have cared at all about it. But if you are curious about how I did it for this one, just stay tuned and I'll explain it to you. So basically what happens when you weave with yarn that changes colors is that you have a gradient effect on the ball. But when we wind yarn onto the shuttle, sometimes this gradient effect, and we finish weaving off with one color, doesn't mean that we will start weaving the second shuttle with the exact same color. So here's a picture of what can happen. So here on this picture, this was when I finished weaving with my first shuttle. So I finished weaving with a darker tone of the color, and then the next yarn I had available was a really light. So it was on this shuttle here, so it was very light, so you can see that it makes kind of a line, so we see that the transition is not very fluid. So again, this is not something that I would care about if it was one of my first few projects. I still think it looks great, but if we want to be super perfect about it, if you like, then we would want to, instead of weaving with the lighter tone right away, we would want to start weaving with a darker tone and let the yarn by itself transition to the lighter tone as it unrolls from the shuttle. So what I did from this project, as we can see in the beginning of the video, the darker tone of this navy color was in the middle, very center of the ball, so the very last yarn that was on the ball of yarn, and I wanted this to be on one of my shuttles. So I have two shuttles. So what I did, I put as much yarn as I could on this shuttle right here, and then I put all the rest of the yarn on this shuttle. Luckily enough, on the one ball of yarn you can fill out 3 shuttles. So that was easier to work around with. So this is my the third shuttle. So now there's no more ball of yarn. So I put all the yarn into this shuttle. So now the last piece of yarn that I have is the dark one, so I can start weaving with this one here. And as you can see, the transition is kept. So as I will keep weaving, the yarn will keep on getting off the shuttle and the transition will keep coming, and at the end it's going to be very light and it's going to match the next shuttle, and the transition will be kept as if I had never ever changed a shuttle of yarn into the project. If I wouldn't have had that many shuttles to work with, I could have easily just made a second ball of yarn. So instead of winding yarn onto a shuttle, I could have just put yarn in a second ball and then put this ball aside, and then with what was left from the original ball, put it on the shuttle, and when the shuttle was empty, simply take the yarn from the second ball and put it to keep weaving with it. So now I have finished off my shuttle right here, and the color I finished off with was the same color that is on the beginning of this last shuttle. So it's gonna be quite easy to start over and the transition will be kept. So let's start this. We really don't have much work left to weave in, so this is gonna be done very soon. Welcome back. Now the scarf is halfway up the loom, so I have cut this part so at the end of the weaving, but the first part is still attached to the loom. The reason for this is because since we haven't fixed the ends yet, I am afraid that it's gonna unweave. So before untying the other end, I'm going to make some knots here to secure the ends, and then we will take it completely off the loom. So let's make some knots. So now with a game board that is heavy enough, I put it on the scarf to make it stable so that it will be easier to work with. For the knots, I make them about half an inch in terms of width. I like them for this one not too big. Of course, the smaller we make them, the more we have to do. And it's simply a I think it's a overhead knot, so simply I go around and I come back in the middle and then I pull up to the edge like that. Now we have one knot, so let's make another one. This is now secured, so let's work on the other end of the scarf. So now it is all attached to the front apron, so I'm gonna undo the knots that I did at the beginning, and let's go! At the beginning of the project, we still have the scrap yarn that we use to even out the threads. So first we need to get this yarn out. So very gently I pull on it. This is it. Now the scarf is completely finished. So after making the knots, I cut the fringes. So I cut them 4 inches long, or if you prefer 10 centimeters. Then I put the scarf into the bath for wet finishing. After wet finishing, I'll let it dry. After that, I cut all the exceeding yarn that was still hanging loose in the woven piece from when I changed yarn and shuttle while weaving. And so now we have this wonderful scarf. So I wove for 73 inches, and after getting off the loom and wet finishing, it measured almost 67 inches, which is a good length. And I want to point out a little bit more of the effect of the yarn. So the gradient effect of the yarn is very visible in the warp. We very nicely see the transition of colors everywhere in the scarf. In the weft, it is a little more subtle, and when we look at it at first, we almost don't see it, but if we pay close attention, we see it more. So here is when I wove with much lighter color, and here I wove with the darkest tone, and if we compare it, now we can see the difference, but in the scarf, the whole transition is kept very, very subtle. So I really hope you like this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.